I'm Dr. Maya Singh, a successful psychologist who has it all: a thriving practice, a beautiful family, and a lovely home. However, my life takes a drastic turn when I starts receiving mysterious messages and gifts that hint at a dark secret from my past. As I tries to uncover the identity of the sender, I realizes that my seemingly perfect life is built on lies and deception. Before we kick off, I just want to say thanks to each of you for joining me on this wild ride. If you're vibing with these empowerment stories, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and it helps us grow this awesome community. Now, let's get into it. My name is Dr. Maya Singh, and until 3 months ago, I believed I had the perfect life. Standing in my corner office on the 15th floor of Chicago's premier medical building, I could see Lake Michigan stretching endlessly toward the horizon. My diplomas hung in precise rows on the mahogany-paneled walls: Harvard undergraduate, Johns Hopkins Medical School, residency at Mayo Clinic, fellowship in child psychology at Stanford. 20 years of education and practice had built me a reputation as one of the city's most sought-after child psychologists. At 38, I had everything I'd dreamed of as a struggling graduate student: a thriving practice where I helped children navigate trauma and developmental challenges, a beautiful Tudor home in Lincoln Park worth $3 million, a husband, Arjun, who ran a successful import business, twin daughters, Priya and Kavya, age 14, who were honor students and talented musicians. My last patient of the day was 8-year-old Tommy, whose parents had brought him in for behavioral issues at school. As I watched him play with the therapy toys, I saw the telltale signs of anxiety masquerading as defiance: clenched jaw, restless movements, the way he avoided eye contact when discussing his home life. "Tommy," I said gently, "sometimes when we're worried about things at home, it can make us feel angry at school. Is there anything at home that makes you feel worried?" He looked up at me with eyes too old for his face. "My daddy says I'm not supposed to tell people about our family business." A familiar chill ran down my spine. How many times had I heard those words from children whose families harbored dangerous secrets? I made a note to schedule a follow-up session and potentially involve Child Protective Services if needed. After Tommy left with his mother, I sat in my office reviewing case notes. This was my favorite time of day: the building quiet, the city lights beginning to twinkle below, the satisfaction of meaningful work completed. I was good at reading between the lines, at seeing what people tried to hide, at helping families heal from the damage that secrets inflicted. Which makes it all the more humiliating that I was completely blind to the secrets festering in my own life. I arrived home at 7:30 to find our house glowing with warm light, the smell of Arjun's cooking drifting from the kitchen. This was our routine. He handled dinner while I finished with patients, and we'd eat together as a family before the girls retreated to homework, and we'd spend an hour catching up on our days. "Mama!" Priya called from the piano bench, where she was practicing Chopin. "Listen to this new piece I learned." The notes flowed like water, complex and beautiful. My daughter's musical talent never ceased to amaze me. Beside her, Kavya looked up from her calculus homework and smiled. "How was your day, Mom?" Kavya asked. She was the more academically inclined twin, already talking about pre-med programs despite being only a freshman in high school. "Productive," I said, kissing the top of her head. "Yours?" "Got an A on my chemistry test. Priya got asked to audition for the Youth Symphony." I felt the familiar swell of maternal pride. My daughters were everything I'd hoped they'd become: intelligent, talented, kind. They had the stability I'd never known growing up in foster care, the unconditional love I'd spent my childhood craving. "Where's Papa?" I asked. "Conference call with suppliers in Mumbai," Priya said, without looking up from her sheet music. "He said to start dinner without him if it runs late." Arjun's import business had grown significantly over the past 5 years, requiring more international calls and travel. I was proud of his success, though I missed the earlier days of our marriage when we'd had more time together. We ate dinner as a trio, the girls chattering about school while I listened with half my attention. The other half was occupied by Tommy's case and a nagging concern about his home situation. Sometimes the hardest part of my job was leaving work at work. "Mom, you're doing that thing again," Kavya observed. "What thing?" "That thing where you're here but not here. Like you're psychoanalyzing someone who isn't at the table." I laughed. "Sorry, occupational hazard. Tell me about your day again, and I promise to be completely present." After dinner, I helped Priya with a history paper, while Kavya practiced violin. Our house filled with the sounds of a busy, accomplished family. Music, discussion, the comfortable rhythm of people who knew and loved each other deeply. Arjun finally emerged from his office at 9:30, looking tired but satisfied. "Good call?" I asked, settling beside him on our living room sofa. "Very good. We're expanding our textile imports to include sustainable fabrics. The profit margins are excellent, and it aligns with our values." He told me about the new suppliers he'd found, the shipping logistics, the market research that suggested growing demand for ethically sourced materials. I listened with genuine interest. Arjun's business acumen had always impressed me, and his commitment to ethical practices was one of the things I loved most about him. "I'm proud of you," I said, curling against his side. "You've built something really meaningful." "We've built something meaningful," he corrected, kissing my temple. "None of this would be possible without your support." Looking around our living room, the family photos covering every surface, the girls' art projects and awards displayed with pride, the comfortable elegance we'd created together, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. This was what I'd dreamed of during those lonely years in the foster system. Belonging, purpose, love. If I'd paid closer attention, I might have noticed that Arjun's phone buzzed constantly during our conversation, and he kept it face down on the coffee table. I might have wondered why his conference calls always seemed to happen when I was coming home. I might have questioned why his business required so much cash flow and why he handled all our finances himself. But I was a psychologist, not a detective, and I trusted the man I'd loved for 16 years completely. The first crack in my perfect life appeared on a Tuesday morning in March. I was in my office reviewing notes for my first appointment when my assistant Sarah knocked on the door. "Dr. Singh? There's a delivery for you." She handed me a small package wrapped in brown paper. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, black and white, slightly grainy, showing a young woman who looked remarkably like me walking out of what appeared to be a courthouse. I stared at the image, my heart rate accelerating. The woman in the photo was definitely me, but I had no memory of when or where it had been taken. The clothes she wore weren't familiar, and the hairstyle was one I'd never chosen. There was no note, no explanation, just the photograph and the unsettling feeling that someone was watching me. "Sarah," I called, "did you see who delivered this?" "No, Dr. Singh. It was just sitting on the reception desk when I got in this morning." I spent the rest of the day trying to concentrate on my patients, but the photograph kept intruding on my thoughts. During lunch, I studied it again, searching for clues. The courthouse in the background was unfamiliar, but there was something about the woman's posture, my posture, that suggested urgency, maybe even fear. That evening, I considered showing it to Arjun, but something held me back. Maybe it was professional paranoia from years of working with families, where secrets were weapons, or maybe it was simple intuition. Either way, I slipped the photograph into my desk drawer and tried to forget about it. But forgetting became impossible when strange things started happening with increasing frequency. My home computer's browsing history showed searches I'd never made, inquiries about changing identities, articles about witness protection programs, legal advice about sealed records. When I asked Arjun and the girls about it, they all denied using the computer for anything unusual. "Maybe you did the searches and forgot," Arjun suggested. "You've been working so many hours lately." It was a reasonable explanation, except I remembered my internet activity with the precision of someone who'd learned early in life to pay attention to details. These searches weren't mine. Then there were the phone calls. My office line would ring, but when I answered, no one spoke. I could hear breathing, sometimes city sounds in the background, but never a voice. Sarah started screening my calls more carefully, but the silent calls continued. "Probably someone with phone anxiety," Sarah suggested. "You know how some people work up the courage to call a therapist but can't bring themselves to speak?" Again, reasonable. Except the calls always came when I was between patients, never during scheduled session times. Someone was monitoring my availability. The final straw came when I discovered that someone had been in my office after hours. Nothing was taken, but my files had been subtly reorganized. My desk drawers opened and closed in a slightly different configuration than I'd left them. The building's security cameras showed nothing unusual, but I knew someone had been there. I started staying later at the office, varying my routine, paying attention to my surroundings in ways I hadn't since my residency in inner-city Detroit. Old survival instincts were kicking in, muscle memory I'd thought I'd left behind with my previous life. Because the truth was, I did have a previous life, one I'd worked very hard to forget, and even harder to keep from Arjun and the girls. The second photograph arrived exactly 1 week after the first. This time, it was slipped under my office door sometime during lunch. Sarah swore she'd been at the reception desk all day and hadn't seen anyone approach my office. The image was clearer this time, color, recent. It showed me leaving Tommy's apartment building after a home visit I'd made the previous week. But I'd never made a home visit to Tommy's family. I'd specifically noted in his file that all sessions should be conducted in my office due to my concerns about his home environment. Yet there I was in the photograph, clearly exiting the same building where Tommy lived. My hands shook as I studied the image. The woman in the photo was definitely me. Same clothes I'd worn that day, same purse, same hairstyle, but I had no memory of being at that location. This time, there was a note tucked behind the photograph. "Some secrets are harder to bury than others. We need to talk." A friend from the past. I canceled my afternoon appointments and drove home, my mind racing through possibilities. Was someone drugging me? Was I having some kind of dissociative episodes? Was this an elaborate hoax designed to make me question my sanity? Or was someone from my carefully buried past finally catching up with me? At home, I went straight to my study and pulled out a box I kept hidden behind my medical journals. Inside were documents I hadn't looked at in 15 years. Court papers, police reports, witness statements, all sealed, all supposedly confidential, all relating to events I'd tried very hard to forget. Maya Singh, Ph.D., successful psychologist and devoted mother, had not always been Maya Singh. Once upon a time, I'd been someone else entirely, someone whose testimony had sent dangerous people to prison, someone who'd needed a new identity to survive. I'd been in witness protection from age 19 to 23, and I'd thought that part of my life was permanently buried. Apparently, I'd been wrong. That night, I tried to pretend everything was normal. I helped Priya with her college application essays, listened to Kavya practice her violin audition piece, made love to my husband with desperate intensity, as if I could anchor myself to this life through sheer force of will. But Arjun noticed my distraction. "You've been tense lately," he said afterward, tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. "Is everything all right at work?" "Just a difficult case," I lied. "A child whose home situation is complicated." "You take on too much," he said gently. "You can't save everyone, Maya." If only he knew how desperately I was trying to save myself. The next morning, I arrived at my office early and thoroughly searched every inch of the space. I installed a small security camera in the corner, angled to capture anyone who might enter after hours. I changed the locks and implemented a new protocol requiring Sarah to personally hand-deliver all packages and mail. For 3 days, nothing happened. I began to hope that whoever was playing games with me had grown bored and moved on. Then Tommy didn't show up for his scheduled appointment. When I called his mother, she sounded confused and upset. Dr. Singh? But Tommy's been seeing you for weeks. He comes home every Tuesday and Thursday and tells me about his sessions with you. He says you've been helping him with his worries about his father. My blood turned to ice. Mrs. Peterson, Tommy hasn't been to my office in over a week. He missed his last scheduled appointment. That's impossible. I dropped him off at your building just yesterday. I asked her to describe exactly where she'd been dropping Tommy off. The address she gave me was 6 blocks from my actual office, a building I'd never been inside. Someone was impersonating me. Someone was conducting therapy sessions with my patient, using my name and reputation, having detailed knowledge of Tommy's case and my treatment. Approach. This wasn't just about my past anymore. Whoever was doing this was putting a vulnerable child at risk. I spent that evening researching the building where Tommy's mother had been dropping him off. It housed several small businesses, a travel agency, an accounting firm, a legal aid clinic, and something called Midwest Consulting Services with no website or public information available. I was so absorbed in my research that I almost missed Arjun's phone conversation in his study. The door was slightly ajar, and his voice carried more clearly than usual. "No, I told you we can't increase the shipment frequency," he was saying. "My wife is getting suspicious, and she's not stupid. She notices patterns." I froze outside his door, suddenly aware that my heart was pounding. "The Chicago operation has to look completely legitimate," he continued. "Maya does background checks on everything. It's her nature. If she starts digging into the business, finances..." There was a long pause then. "I understand the timeline pressure, but we stick to the plan. Small, regular shipments that look like normal textile imports. Nothing that would trigger an investigation." Investigation? What kind of textile business would trigger an investigation? I crept back to the living room, my mind reeling. Arjun's voice had carried a tone I'd never heard before. Cold, calculating, discussing me like I was a problem to be managed rather than a wife to be trusted. When he emerged from his study 20 minutes later, his expression was perfectly normal. "Sorry about that, love. Supply chain issues with the Mumbai suppliers." "Anything serious?" I asked, studying his face. "Nothing I can't handle. Just the usual headaches of international business." But I noticed he was careful not to leave his phone unattended for the rest of the evening, and when he thought I wasn't looking, I caught him watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. That night, I lay awake listening to his breathing, wondering how many conversations like that he'd had without my knowledge. How long had he been discussing me like a security risk? What kind of business required such careful management of a spouse's suspicions? The next morning brought new revelations about my family's capacity for deception. I was making breakfast when Kavya came downstairs looking nervous. "Mom, I need to tell you something, but you have to promise not to get mad." "I can't promise that until I know what it is," I said using my therapist voice. "But I can promise to listen before I react. Priya and we've been lying to you about something." My stomach clenched. What kind of lying? Remember all those violin lessons and piano lessons we've been going to? The extra practice sessions and youth orchestra rehearsals? I nodded, pride swelling despite my anxiety. The girls' musical accomplishments were one of my greatest joys. Well, some of them are real, but some of them, we've been meeting with someone who said they knew you from before you were our mom. The kitchen seemed to tilt around me. "What do you mean, before I was your mom?" "This woman contacted us about 6 months ago. She said she used to know you when you were younger, before you married Papa. She said she had stories about you that she wanted to share with us." I sat down heavily, my legs suddenly unable to support me. "What kind of stories?" "Stories about how brave you were, how you helped catch bad people, how you had to change your name and move away to stay safe." Kavya's words hit me like physical blows. My carefully constructed life, my protected identity, my daughter's innocence. All of it was crumbling. "This woman," I said carefully, "what did she look like?" "Older than you, maybe 50-something, short gray hair, really intense eyes. She always wore business suits and talked like a lawyer or a cop. Detective Sarah Martinez. It had to be. The one person from my past who'd known exactly where I'd gone and who I'd become. Where did you meet her? Different places. Coffee shops, the library, once at that building where you thought we were sent taking extra music lessons. The same building where someone had been impersonating me with Tommy. The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't want to see. Kavya, this is very important. Did this woman ask you to keep secrets from me? My daughter's face crumpled. She said you'd be upset if you knew she'd contacted us. She said you'd worked very hard to put your old life behind you, but that we had a right to know who our mother really was. And what did she tell you about who I really was? That you were a hero, Kavya whispered. That you saved lots of people by being brave enough to tell the truth about dangerous criminals. She said you were in witness protection, and that's why you changed your name. I pulled Kavya into my arms, holding her close while my mind raced. Sarah Martinez had been the detective who'd handled my case 20 years ago, the one who'd convinced me to testify, despite the risks. She'd been the one to arrange my new identity and relocation. But why was she contacting my daughters now? And why all the games with mysterious photographs and fake therapy sessions? Kavya, I need you to tell me everything this woman said to you and Priya. Every conversation, every meeting. Can you do that? She nodded against my shoulder. Are we in trouble? No, sweetheart, you're not in trouble, but I need to understand what's happening so I can keep our family safe. That afternoon, I sat in my office with both daughters, listening to them recount 6 months of secret meetings with Detective Martinez. The woman had been methodical, building trust, gradually sharing carefully chosen details about my past that painted me as a hero while omitting the more traumatic aspects of what I'd witnessed and testified about. She said the bad people you helped catch are getting out of prison soon, Priya said. She said that's why she wanted to reconnect with you, to make sure you were prepared. My blood turned to ice. The Castellano crime family had been sentenced to 25 years to life. If they were getting parole after only 20 years. Did she say when they were getting out? Soon, Kavya said. She said that's why she was in such a hurry to contact us. She wanted to help you prepare for what might happen. But Martinez's methods didn't make sense. If she was genuinely concerned about my safety, why not contact me directly? Why involve my children in elaborate deceptions? Why the mysterious photographs and fake therapy sessions, unless she wasn't trying to protect me at all? I spent the rest of the day making phone calls to contacts I hadn't spoken to in 15 years. The U.S. Marshal's office that had handled my witness protection. The FBI agents who'd investigated the Castellano family. The prosecutor who'd built the case around my testimony. What I learned made me question everything I thought I knew about my past and my present. Detective Sarah Martinez had been found dead in her apartment 3 weeks ago. Apparent suicide, though the investigation was ongoing. Whoever had been meeting with my daughters wasn't Sarah Martinez. That night, I received a phone call that changed everything. I was in my study, researching everything I could find about the Castellano family's current legal status, when my cell phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Maya," said a voice I recognized from 20 years of nightmares. "Or should I call you Doctor?" Sing now? Vincent Castellano Jr., the son of the man I'd helped convict, the one who'd sworn in open court that he'd make me pay for destroying his family? "Vincent," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I heard you were still in prison. Minimum security facility, actually. Amazing what good behavior and an excellent lawyer can accomplish. I've been out for 6 months now." 6 months. Exactly when the strange incidents had started. What do you want? What I've always wanted, Maya. Justice. You destroyed my family with your lies. They weren't lies, and you know it. I saw your father murder Tony Ricci. I saw your brother dispose of the body. I told the truth. Your truth sent innocent men to prison, while the real killers went free. I'd heard this argument before, during the trial. The Castellano family's defense had been elaborate and almost convincing. That I'd been coerced into false testimony, that I'd misidentified the perpetrators, that the real murderers had framed the family to take over their territory. But I knew what I'd seen, and I'd been willing to sacrifice my entire life to make sure the truth came out. Vincent, if you're planning to hurt me or my family— Hurt you? He laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Maya, you've already done that yourself. I don't need to hurt you. I just need to show you the truth about the life you've built on lies. What are you talking about? Your perfect husband, your successful business, your beautiful daughters. How much of it is real, Maya? How much of it would survive if certain information became public? The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in growing dread. I couldn't sleep that night. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. I kept thinking about Vincent's words. How much of it would survive if certain information became public? At 3 a.m., I made a decision that would have horrified the trusting wife I'd been just days earlier. I crept into Arjun's study and began systematically searching through his business records. What I found made me sick. Arjun's import business was real, but it was also a front. Hidden among the legitimate textile imports were financial records showing regular cash deposits that didn't correspond to any documented sales. Wire transfers to offshore accounts. Shipping manifests that didn't match the actual goods being imported. My husband was money laundering on a massive scale. But the worst discovery was a folder of photographs, surveillance images of me at various locations around the city, dating back months. Someone had been watching me long before the mysterious packages started arriving at my office, and at the bottom of the folder was a contract bearing Arjun's signature, agreeing to provide monitoring and intelligence services for a company I didn't recognize. He'd been paid to spy on his own wife. I sat in his leather chair, surrounded by evidence of betrayal, and felt the last of my perfect life crumble around me. My husband wasn't just hiding his criminal activities from me. He was actively working against me with people who had every reason to want me dead. 20 years of marriage, 2 children, a life I'd built from nothing, all of it based on lies. But the deepest betrayal was yet to come. I confronted Arjun the next morning after the girls left for school. I know about the money laundering, I said without preamble. I know about the surveillance photos. I know about your contract to spy on me. He looked up from his coffee with an expression of mild surprise, as if I'd commented on the weather, rather than accused him of betraying me to dangerous criminals. Maya, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been lying to me for our entire marriage? That you've been working with people who want to destroy me? That you've put our daughters at risk? Our daughters are not at risk, he said sharply. I made sure of that. By betraying me? I looked at this man I'd loved for 16 years and saw a stranger. And you're helping him do it. I'm playing both sides to keep our family safe. I feed Vincent information that makes him feel like he's getting revenge while ensuring it's nothing that will actually destroy you. I've been walking a tightrope for months, trying to satisfy his need for vengeance while protecting the woman I love. The woman you love? I laughed bitterly. You don't even know me. You've never known me. You fell in love with a lie. No, Arjun said firmly. I fell in love with the woman you became. The Maya Singh I married, brilliant, compassionate, devoted to helping children heal from trauma. She's real. The fact that she was born from necessity doesn't make her any less genuine. That afternoon, I called both girls home from school early. It was time for complete honesty, even if it shattered what remained of their childhood innocence. I need to tell you some things about our family, I began, and I need you to understand that no matter what you learn, I love you both more than life itself. Priya and Kavya sat on our living room sofa, holding hands the way they had as small children when they sensed adult tension they didn't understand. First, the woman you've been meeting with is not Detective Martinez. The real Detective Martinez died 3 weeks ago. Kavya gasped. Then who? Someone working for people who want to hurt me. Someone who's been using you to get information about our family. I told them everything. about my original identity, about the witness protection program, about the crime family I'd helped convict. I explained why I'd changed my name and moved to Chicago, why I'd never told them about my past. But what about Papa? Priya asked. Does he know about all this? This was the hardest part. Your father has known since the day we met. Our marriage began as a business arrangement designed to keep me under surveillance. Both girls stared at me in shock. But Papa loves you, Kavya protested. Anyone can see that. He may love the woman I became, I said carefully, but he was hired to watch me. Everything about how we met, how we fell in love, how we built this family, it was all part of a plan to make sure I never caused problems for certain people. That's not true, Priya said fiercely. Papa loves us. He loves you. You can't fake that for 16 years. I wanted to believe she was right. But I'd spent the last 24 hours discovering how much you could fake, how completely you could deceive people who trusted you completely. There's something else, I said. We might not be safe here anymore. The people from my past, they're not content to just watch me. They want revenge, and they're willing to hurt all of us to get it. What are we going to do? Kavya asked in a small voice. I don't know yet, but I promise you I will keep you safe. No matter what happens, no matter what we have to do, I will not let anyone hurt you. That evening, I got my answer about what the fake Detective Martinez wanted. She called while I was making dinner, her voice cheerful and professional. Dr. Singh? This is Detective Martinez. I understand your daughters mentioned our conversations to you. Who are you, really? I asked. I'm exactly who I said I was. Someone concerned about your family's safety, but I think it's time we met in person. I'm not meeting you anywhere. Oh, but you are. Because if you don't, those surveillance photos of your husband's money laundering operation are going to find their way to the FBI, along with documentation of his connections to the Castellano organization, along with evidence that Dr. Maya Singh, respected child psychologist, has been complicit in criminal activity for years. My heart sank. Even if I could prove I'd been unaware of Arjun's activities, the scandal would destroy my career and reputation. Worse, it would put my daughters through public humiliation and potential danger. What do you want? I want you to remember the rest of what you witnessed 20 years ago. The parts you never testified about. The parts that could free innocent men and put the real criminals behind bars. I told the truth. I testified about everything I saw. No, Maya, you testified about everything you thought you saw. But memory is a funny thing, isn't it? Sometimes trauma blocks important details. Sometimes what we think we remember isn't quite accurate. I know what I saw. Vincent Castellanos' father didn't kill Tony Ricci. You know this deep down. You've always known this. Your conscious mind blocked it out because the truth was too dangerous. But your subconscious remembers. That's not possible. Meet me tomorrow night at the Millennium Park fountain. Come alone. And Maya, start trying to remember what really happened that night 20 years ago. Your family's future depends on it. Training programs. We teach other psychologists and legal advocates how to identify cases involving potentially compromised witness testimony. We create a network of centers instead of trying to handle everything ourselves. It was an ambitious vision, but one that made sense. The more I worked with wrongful conviction cases, the more I realized how common the problems were. Traumatized witnesses, coercive interrogation techniques, prosecutorial misconduct. The same patterns appeared in case after case. We'd need significant funding, I said. I've been in touch with the Innocence Project and several major foundations. They're interested in what we're doing, very interested. And we'd need to document our methodologies, create standardized protocols. Exactly. Maya, we could revolutionize how the justice system handles witness testimony. We could prevent future wrongful convictions while helping overturn past ones. I looked around my office, at the wall of photographs showing clients we'd helped exonerate, at the case files representing families we were still fighting for, at the diplomas and certifications that represented my journey from trauma victim to trauma specialist. Let's do it, I said. Let's change the system. 2 years after my world collapsed, I was stronger than I'd ever been. not because I'd overcome my challenges, but because I'd learned to derive meaning from them. I was sitting in my apartment one evening, reviewing applications for our new training program, when Priya found me at the kitchen table. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever regret telling the truth, even though it destroyed our old life?" I looked at my daughter, now 16, more mature than she should have had to become, but also more genuine than she'd been when our family was built on carefully maintained illusions. "No," I said without hesitation. "Do you?" Sometimes I miss how simple everything used to be, when I didn't have to think about whether people were lying to me, when I could just trust that the adults in my life were telling me the truth. That simplicity was an illusion, sweetheart. The lies were always there. You just couldn't see them yet. But ignorance was easier. Easier, yes, but not better. Priya, every family we help at the center has suffered because someone chose the easy lie over the difficult truth. I don't want that for you. I don't want you to build your life on foundations that could crumble the moment someone decides to stop pretending. She nodded thoughtfully. Is that why you and Papa aren't getting back together? Because you can't pretend anymore? That's part of it. Your father and I are learning to be honest with each other for the first time in our relationship. It's complicated. Do you still love him? I thought about Arjun, about the man I'd married, the man I'd discovered he really was, and the man he was trying to become now that all the secrets were out. I love who he's becoming, I said. I don't know if that's enough. 5 years after Vincent Castellano walked out of prison, I stood at the podium of the American Psychological Association's annual conference, delivering a keynote address about trauma, memory, and the reliability of witness testimony. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my name is Dr. Maya Singh, and I helped send innocent people to prison. The auditorium was completely silent. 25 years ago, I was a traumatized teenager whose testimony contributed to the wrongful conviction of 2 men. For 2 decades, I lived with the consequences of that error while the real killers went free. Today, I want to talk about how we can prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. I told my story. All of it. The murder I'd witnessed, the trauma that had distorted my memories, the well-meaning professionals who'd coached me to remember events differently than they'd actually occurred. I discussed the psychological research on memory formation under stress, the ethical obligations of law enforcement when working with traumatized witnesses, and the systemic changes needed to prevent wrongful convictions. The truth, I concluded, is that memory is not a recording device. It's a reconstruction process, influenced by trauma, suggestion, time, and the psychological needs of the person doing the remembering. When we understand this, we can develop better methods for gathering and evaluating witness testimony. We can build a justice system that seeks truth rather than convenient narratives. The standing ovation lasted for 3 minutes. Afterward, as I was gathering my materials, a young woman approached the podium. "Dr. Singh? My name is Jennifer Martinez. My father was Detective Sarah Martinez." I froze, recognizing the family resemblance immediately. "I want you to know," she continued, "that my father's corruption destroyed my family too. My mother never got over the shame. My brother left town and changed his name. I became a public defender because I wanted to prevent the kind of injustices my father perpetrated. Jennifer, I'm so sorry for what your family went through." "Don't be sorry, be proud. What you've built from the wreckage of those crimes, the center, the training programs, the policy changes you've advocated for. It gives meaning to all the suffering. My father took lives and destroyed families, but you've devoted your life to preventing that from happening to others." She handed me a business card. "I run a legal aid clinic in Phoenix. When you're ready to expand the Rishi Singh model to Arizona, call me." As I watched her walk away, I thought about the ripple effects of truth-telling. My decision to recant my testimony had destroyed my marriage, ended my career, and shattered my daughter's sense of security. But it had also freed innocent people, exposed corruption, and created systems to prevent future wrongful convictions. The costs had been enormous, but the benefits were immeasurable. I walked out of the conference center into the Chicago evening, past the fountain where I'd first learned the truth about my past, toward the life I'd built from the ashes of my illusions. It wasn't the perfect life I'd once imagined, but it was an honest one. And after everything I'd been through, honesty felt like the greatest luxury of all. 10 years later, the Rishi Singh Center had helped exonerate over 200 wrongfully convicted individuals and had trained thousands of legal and psychological professionals in trauma-informed witness interview techniques. Vincent Castellano had become one of the country's leading advocates for criminal justice reform, and I had remarried. Not to Arjun, but to a fellow psychologist who specialized in treating law enforcement officers with PTSD. My daughters were both in graduate school, Priya studying social work, Kavya pursuing a joint degree in law and psychology. They'd inherited my commitment to justice, but also my hard-won understanding that truth was more valuable than comfort. Arjun had eventually remarried as well, to a woman who knew his full history from the beginning. We maintained a cordial relationship built on mutual respect and shared concern for our daughter's well-being. Sometimes I wondered what my life would have looked like if I'd never received that first mysterious photograph, never been forced to confront the lies my existence was built on. I probably would have continued as a successful child psychologist, married to a man whose love was genuine, but whose honesty was compromised, raising daughters in the shelter of carefully maintained illusions. It would have been easier. It might even have been happy. But it wouldn't have been true. And truth, I'd learned, was the only foundation strong enough to build a life on.